Thank you for coming to the museum tonight. My name is Andy Versosa. I'm the interim executive director and curator for this season. It's my distinct pleasure to introduce Don tonight. Don't read my notes. I don't want you to blush now. This has been a really great season for the Totally Tuesday Talks, and we've had some really great speakers. I want to take this opportunity just to, who's been to the talks this season? Can you just raise your hand? And how they been? Good, bad? Okay, good. That's awesome. We had, I gave a talk earlier in the season. We had Victoria Reed give a talk from the MFA. We also had Tom Butler give a talk about his work. We had Earl Shuttleworth, Libby Bischoff, and Susan Danley give a talk. We had Carl Little give a talk this year. And we also had Erica Hirschler give a talk. We had Henry Duffy give a talk. I wasn't here, I'm sorry to say, but I heard it was great. And we had Wendy Turner give a talk just before this. And we have Don tonight. In your seats when you sat down, you probably found one of these. And this is something that Don brought for all of you. I would read this. It has some great information. It has some really great places where he has shown his work, special exhibitions, collections, lectures. This is quite comprehensive and very nice. This evening, it's my distinct pleasure again to say we're happy to have Don here. I have to read all this stuff. And there will be a quiz. You know, his work is in our permanent collection. We also sell his work in our museum gift shop, and we have examples of his work that we have here in the other room in the Long Gallery. And his work is in collections all around the country, internationally.
Well, recently Vivian brought some prints to England, and the Fritz William Museum has acquired 2 of the woodcuts in Cambridge.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. And then I just want to say, back in May when you wanted to do this talk, this is an add-on, and we just kind of threw this together at that time.
I remember you walking around, your sleeves are rolled up, and you're walking, and you said, Don Gorvett, what do you want?
I say that about every artist. No, just kidding.
And you were very, well, let me think about this. You know, I remembered you were really, wow.
But it
was the wrong time.
It worked out really well, and you know, we're really happy to collaborate with also the Star Island Corporation for this. So without further ado, I'm going to pass my microphone off to you, Robert Townsend. Yes, Robert Townsend. And thank you very much.
Oh, thank you.
Okay.
I'll get close to Pam.
Okay.
Come on, Pam. See, I've got this.
Hi, everyone.
Oh, there we go.
Hi, Don.
Okay.
I'm Pam Smith. I'm the Director of Development for Star Island. Can I just have who's been out to Star Island or the Isles of Shoals?
Wow.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Please keep coming back, you know that chant. I've been working for Star Island for a couple years now. I'm the Director of Development and also working on increasing outreach and engagement, getting new folks out to the island, people who haven't been there for some time. We'd love for you to come back. Star Island is owned by Star Island Corporation, which is a nonprofit organization, and we're a conference center. We're a seasonal conference center. We offer this year over 62 conferences on everything from arts to natural history to spirituality, yoga, meditation, pretty much everything under the sun. And we welcome all of you to come out. You can also come out for a day visit. This year is Star Island's centennial year. We've been offering conferences for actually over 100 years. So we've really had a wonderful year of celebration. And I had approached Don at the recommendation of one of our board members to see if he might be interested in working with us. So Don said yes, and lucky him, I put him on a boat in November,
Yeah.
no less, to come out to Star Island for the first time. And we spent some time talking, and he spent a day sketching. It was just a really wonderful, magical day. And out of that, he created this incredible, incredible piece of artwork to commemorate our centennial. Featured in, and of course he's going to talk about this, but this is our Oceanic Hotel, which is 140 years old, out on Star. It was recently named to the New Hampshire Preservation Alliance 7 to Save properties in the state of New Hampshire. So we've done a lot of work to preserve and rehabilitate the property, which we will continue to do. But I'm just so thrilled to be working with you, Don, and I'm very
thank you.
thankful, and I'm thankful you're all here to learn more about it and this wonderful work. So, enjoy.
Thank you, Pam. Yeah, Pam came into the gallery and she said, I've been speaking to Mary Trudeau, who's on the board of the directors of Star Island. And she said, Mary thinks that you ought to do a woodcut of the hotel, the Oceanic Hotel. So Pam came in and she said, let's go out. That was in the middle of the summer, sort of latter part. And she said, we'll go out in the fall. And then it got to be September, and then it got to be September 5th, then it got to be October. And then after several aborted attempts, we finally were able to get on a boat on the most beautiful, beautiful, pristine day. And we motored out of Piscataqua River. We went all the way down. We entered into the open sea. The great big salt freighter sitting out, waiting to come in. And then the island got closer. I'm embarrassed because so many of you have been out to Star Island. I had never been out there until So anyway, we got to the island, and I was very surprised in a way. I imagined it to be much more remote and austere, but it was a very, very friendly place. It was very beautiful, and there are lots of interesting buildings. So many of you have been out there anyway, so I needn't speak very much about it. But we did a tour of the island. I walked all around the island and all around. We went everywhere. And then finally I thought, oh, now I have to sit down and draw. We only had a certain amount of time. And there was a nice hand cart I could pull up and sit. So as a matter of fact, Perry did some photographs. This is a good time to show you them. Perry did some photographs of me out there working. And so I just put them on a board so you could see. So I was out there. So you could see them. And it really wasn't as cold as it looks. And a garden cart, I was drawing on the garden cart, but it was a beautiful, beautiful day, and we ended up taking clothes off because it was so warm. And so, take no further than that. And then, so what I did is when I went out, I did a very small, quick drawing of the Star Island Hotel. You know what you can see. And then, actually, Vivian, would you like to walk down with it and you can show them? And then also, go right down the aisle, Vivian, that's good. And then, see, and I also did a small drawing. Pavina, you can take that one. And this is a drawing that I did. After that, I did this little drawing of the chapel. So I can tell you something briefly about my medium that I'm working in. It's woodcut, which is among the oldest mediums to man. And it's a very simple, primal, basic method of working. You take a wood surface. In this particular point, in this case, this is interesting. Is this the block?
That's the wood block for the etching.
It is. Where's the wood block for? Oh, that's the one I want to show you. See, okay. Okay, can we take that one down? Okay, this is the wood block. Okay, there. Yeah. So what the woodcut medium is you carve with hand tools, of which I've put out on the table here, which later on you can take a look at. These are small tools. I carve into the wood. The concave areas do not print. The surface does. So it's a relief printing method. Then I ink the block up, put paper on top, and then through a lot of pressure, in my case, an etching press steel roller, 300 pounds or more, I put it through the etching press roller. It crushes the ink off of the block onto the paper. So it's a very simple method. Paper goes on the inked block, comes up, you have an image. That's the simple explanation. What I do is I use a reduction method. I do all of the colors on one block. And basically, I register my paper on 2 pins so that the paper falls the same place in the block every time, so the colors will line up. And I'll determine an order of colors and a number I'll print. I usually print from light to dark. And so I would start by mixing a beautiful white, and I have an indelible drawing of which you can still see on the block. So I'll have an indelible drawing, and then I'll print a white color, and then print the entire edition, which may have been 36. Then what I'll do is wash the white off the block, look at my design, and proceed to cut every part of that design where I want the white to remain, because it won't print if I cut. So what you're doing is you're layering colors one on top of the other, cutting in between each layer to leave that color that you just printed to stay. You're making windows for your colors to remain. If I didn't cut between each color, all you'd have is one color at the end of the block. You wouldn't be able to have all the multiple colors. So what you're looking at here and viewing is what was left of the block after all of the colors had been printed. And so it's the last dark color, actually. So I'm going to show you the drawing, which I did. I did a drawing, which I showed you, and then I did a copy of the drawing. Where is that? Excellent, yeah, thank you. So I did a copy of the drawing and made it larger, and then I glued it to the block. And what I do is I cut through the paper when I'm doing the wood cut. So this is a colored kind of study that I did of the hotel. And it's color, wash, and pencil on top of the Xerox copy. So this gave me an idea of what I might like to do, or I hoped that the print might come out somewhat resembling the actual drawing. And what I did is Bob Townsend is with us. We're honored to have him. And Bob is an outstanding master printer. So I asked Bob on this occasion if he would come and help me do this big block. It's a lot of inking. I'm inking this block with a hand brayer. And so it takes, I don't know how many minutes for each print to be pulled. It was 8 to 10 minutes. We would ink the block up, then put the paper on the pins, print, put it through the press, come back out. So we spent a lot of time printing together. And I will show you what we did is every time I laid a color down, we took, when we were finished printing that color, we took an impression in black and white of the block. And so I have with me all of the stages of the various impressions from the very beginning to the end. But to show you that it is a reduction woodcut, the last color that I printed on this block in the sky was a red. So I have in the actual print red traces in the chapel in the sky. But when I finished printing the red, I merely removed all of this. So this is what happens at the end. Most of all of your previous cutting is all on the floor because you have to keep removing parts of the block for the next color. So that's why. So the sky has multiple colors in it. When you'll see in the first states many colors in the sky. And little by little, I cut them out, state by state, until I wanted no more dark in the sky. Then I removed the entire sky so that when I inked up the block, no other colors would get into the sky that I didn't desire to have. And these were the black and white states. This indicates to you how much of the block was still there after each print, Bob. And that was state number 2. And you got state number 3. So you can see what's happening. The block is getting disintegrated bit by bit by bit. And this was state number 4. You see? See how the sky is getting to be less and less. And then we have state number 5. See? Hold that up. And here's state number 6 before the church was finally removed. You can hold this up. And then what's this? State number 7. See, we do have a problem here for space. This is the 7, and then there's state number 8. And then, so you can see how by the evidence of the block getting to be less and less and less until finally, at the end, you have what you have here in the block.
John, are they in order? Because this one has the solid black under the porch.
Yes.
Am I in the wrong place? All the rest have the lines.
I think you're in the, no, you're in the right place. These, you might be right.
See the little lines under the
Yeah, you're a troublemaker. You might be right. And then this is the finished woodcut here. See, so that is the finished print. See, yeah. And then what happens is that as you're printing and doing the cutting in the States, sometimes you change color, or you determine after a couple of prints that you need more of a color to show, so now you cut more of the block away. So it does show. Now you're going to have individual unique prints in that edition, prints that have colors that others don't. And I'm going to show you 2 of these woodcuts. Let's keep this one here. Vivian, you can hold that one up. Excellent. You guys did great. Take that one, Pam. So this is a unique impression. Unfortunately, this is the only one like this. It happens sometimes. And so this also, you see the red sky? So this is, you know, the block can change. And oftentimes, if you do an edition of, say, 30 prints or 20 prints or 15, there'll be individual unique impressions that exist within the edition. And it's largely due to the fact that I have to take prints from my states. I have to take prints from my edition to experiment. So of all those 25 or 30 that I print, there are numbers of them that will be unique because I'm experimenting with them and trying something else. And I can't always tell at the very end what's going to happen, ultimately. So also, now what I'm going to do is we were also experimenting with the idea. Bob Townsend is a master printer, and he's going to tell you something about a technique. We decided that we would do another woodblock, but that we would also incorporate another etching method with the woodblock. So Bob's going to tell you a little bit about the gravure method, and then I'm going to show you a print that we did using that technique. It's an etching. That's the print there. Okay. Yeah, go ahead, Bob. You can. I'll start you off, actually, Bob. This is a print taken from this block. There. This is a print taken from this in a very light color and a tone. So we decided we would do variations of colors, and then Bob would trap this with his method. So you'll see what it looked like after we did it, after Bob explains a little bit about it.
The idea in terms of introducing the etching into the project was that it's easier to produce it, it's cheaper for me and for Don. I can print unlimited amounts of prints pretty much off of the copper plate once it's made, and we can reduce it to a 2 or 3 color print. So I started out by taking Don's drawing and putting it on film. Now this is smaller than the original, so we have the ability to send this out to a Photoshop, and they put this on film for me, and then I translate this onto a piece of copper through a process called gravure, which is an old process used in the early 1800s by photographers in France and in England, where they actually printed newspapers, and then photographers used it to actually reproduce their work. So once I made the plate, which is this here, that's the finished product from the plate. The beauty of the process is it gives you continuous tone without any photomechanical mechanism. So it's basically aquatint. And it's all etched by using the gravure tissue, which is gelatin. And when you expose the film positive to it, the gelatin reads the density of the blacks. And as you go through the developing of the process, when you finish, the gelatin sits on the plate at different thicknesses. From there, you go into your acid. The water content of the acid, it determines how quickly it breaks down the gelatin. So you start with a very high Barmé, which means there's a lot of acid, very little water. And then you work your way down the scale into the lower Barmé. And I can watch a Stouffer scale, which is a gray scale, and I can watch the etching actually take place on the gray scale as it breaks down each different level of gray. So the copper plate is here. So this takes about an hour to etch.
I'll walk it down, Bob. You
Okay. So I printed a few off of this, probably around 10 impressions. At this point, I'll flash it with steel. The steel plating will protect the image so it won't break down, so I can print a couple hundred prints. So the first print will look basically the same as the number 200. So the idea here is to give a product. Don's process is expensive. The prints are very, they're not outrageous, but this allows us to hit another market of maybe under $1,000, whereas Don's product is above that. So we're trying to give the ability to people still contribute to this process and to contribute to Star Island and help the process along to raise some money. Yeah, sure.
Would you consider making them smaller as well as?
I could, yeah, but how much more you want to dilute it, I don't know. If we keep on downsizing, then we considered this somewhat, making it small in the beginning. Part of the problem is Don's drawing is very dark, so when you reduce the drawing onto the film, the blacks condense and they get darker. So the print started to get a little too dark as it was. Don had to go into the plate and open it up a little bit before I etched it, and even after I etched it, to get some of the whites back into it. You'll see it so the wood block that we did, which is this here, I offset the etching onto the wood so Don could see the image, and then he starts cutting away. So I just took the print once I run it through my press, registered to the block, offset the black image onto the block. It's all registered. Don can start cutting and register the colors. So we did 2 colors, but the one print we brought today is just 1 color. So I just did a very quick. Again, we're trying to get this to be as simple as possible as far as the etching. So we did cut 2 blocks, but we kind of ended up choosing just the 1 color block to kind of promote it this time. We may get into using the 2 colors eventually. We'll see how it goes.
And the finished print is here. Vivian's going to walk it down the aisle. This is a combination of gravure and woodcut. See?
So I use the gravure process. It's a very old process, but it's also something that allows me to work with people like Don or any other artist that wants to come into the shop. They can paint directly on Mylar just by drawing or painting with paint. They can create continuous tone washes. I can take that film and get it on the copper before they even come to the shop, and I've got 2 or 3 plates done for them. Now, I don't encourage people to stop at that point because the process somewhat is flat because it's aquatint. So I encourage them to continue to work in the plate, but use it as a stepping stone to get them rolling. So it saves them a lot of money because it would take them 2 or 3 months to learn the whole process of developing some of the things I get done in a couple of days. So it advances me and gets a lot more work done. And it makes it easier for artists to come into my shop and work and not be, not have to learn the process and take the time that it takes to get something going. A lot of artists know how to do it, but they still will use the process because it's quick. And then they instruct me how to delete information or add information. You can always add, you can always delete at any time. So it's a lot of fun. So I've kind of used an old process and taken it and used it a little bit to go with, I use the computer to take work off of someone's website, go into Photoshop, go to my Epson printer, get an output, put it on the plate, and then they're ready to go. So it just is a big stepping stone, saves them a lot of money, and gets me going fast too.
So we can entertain some questions. Just before we do, there's something, it's not entirely irrelevant, and that is that a neighboring island of Star is Appledore. And currently there is an exhibition at the Peabody Essex Museum of all of Childe Hassam's paintings that he did from Appledore. And it's a breathtaking exhibition. If you get a chance, you have to see it. It's absolutely magnificent. He did paintings from, I don't know, maybe it was the mid-80 or 70 or 80 to 1914 or 15. And he was a frequent visitor to Appledore. And so you're going to see all of his beautiful paintings that he did. Yeah.
I would also add, Don, and for everybody interested, in here in the small gallery, which has recently been installed, a recent acquisitions exhibit of Alexander de Steiger, who for 17 or 18 years has been the winter caretaker on Star Island. She lives out there, and she's a professional artistic photographer, and she has a couple pieces from Star Island in this exhibit.
Additionally, yes. And they're also at the Peabody Essex Museum too, in that exhibit, yeah. And so, yeah, good questions, yeah. Yes?
Do you draw your original picture in reverse, or do you draw it the way you want it, and then how do you get it reversed on the plate?
That's pretty good. Should I say that? What I do is I took my original drawing, and customarily, I used to take and redraw the entire work on the block, on the wood block. That took me additional days or weeks. Now what I do is I take my drawing and I do a very large Xerox copy of my drawing, and I mirror it. That way, when I print it, it will come out as one would see it in real life. So I will take and do a mirrored image and a big Xerox copy, then I will laminate it to the block of wood by running it. I would glue the block and then put the paper onto the block and then laminate it onto the block by putting it under tremendous pressure many, many times until it's flat. That's what I did, yeah, yeah.
Two questions. What is the wood that you work with? And then you said you have to clean the block in between colors.
Yeah.
What do you use to clean it?
Well, the wood I use is good old-fashioned plywood from Home Depot. Pitch for Home Depot. No, not at all. And I get various kinds of plywood. Sometimes I'll use birch plywood. I might use Luan. There's oak plywood. There are various hard, plywoods, and some softer than others, and underlayment plywood, which is very rugged. And I print with oil-based etching inks, sometimes relief printing inks. So I'm always awash in the real stuff, paint thinner. Which probably disturbs some people, but yeah, we're dirty printmakers, and besides I like the smell of it, and and interestingly enough, when people come into the gallery, they go, "Oh, it smells so good in here. I really like it." They do.
Some leave though too, Don.
On a rare occasion. And then Bob introduced to me a hand cleaner, actually, that gets all of that stuff off you at the end of the day, but because I'm usually walking around with ink on my hands. Yeah.
What kind of paper do you use in the final print?
What I've been using is Japanese papers, varieties of papers. People always say, well, you use rice paper. Well, that's really a generic term. It's not really rice paper. Japanese papers are made from varieties of organic materials. I happen to like Okawara paper, there's Hosho, there's Suzuki. There are many varieties of papers, density, thickness, some are very thin. So I do like the Japanese paper because they receive ink very beautifully. And I like the ink to be absorbed into the paper. As I say, there are many people who, if you're not careful about layering so many colors on a piece of paper, I'm very, very careful about how I ink these blocks, how we ink the blocks. And we drive the ink into the block. We don't roll it on. So that it's thin and you drive it into the block, and the idea is to keep it very thin because you want the surface to be beautiful on the print when you finish it. People oftentimes layer layers and layers of ink, one on top of the other, one wet on top of wet. And the result generally I refer to as, the result oftentimes looks like a bad shower curtain. So I do like the matte and the dry and the simple. It's because Bob has to wet. I'm printing dry paper, and then Bob's wetting the etching paper so that it's stretching and it's hard to register. So Bob came up with some incredibly ingenious ways. What did you do, Bob? You took the paper before I printed and stretched
I
it?
pre-stretch the paper, then print on the paper, and then offset it. So that gets all the stretching out of the paper before I go to the wood, basically.
Don, do you destroy the block after you're done with your whole process of printing? What happens to the blocks?
The interesting thing about the wood block and reduction print is much of it is gone. And I would never destroy the blocks because I cut them as carefully. I'm very conscious about the beauty of the block even when I'm making the print, how it's cut, what it looks like. So it's important to me. I know there are people who don't take care of their blocks. It's interesting. And I take care of them, and I clean them, and I look at them really as works of art. And it's interesting because the blocks are very easy for a person of limited experience visually to understand. They're simple. There's nothing that you have to work at to try to gain an understanding of it. It's all there. Sometimes, I mean, it's not a very good analogy, but sometimes I think of the wood block as the battlefield and the print as the battle plan. And so it's a visceral thing, the wood block. There are people that come into my gallery that have little or no use for what I do, what they look at my work. But to a person, they love the wood block because that's what they're used to looking at and seeing. Well, sometimes I refer to it as home goods. But that's where many people are. It's the wood block. And so the print is difficult because you're challenged with the flat surface and colors, and it's transformative. The print is transformative from the block, which you can understand, to something which takes you somewhere else that requires a greater vocabulary on the part of the viewer. Sometimes. Yeah.
You said you drive the ink into the block. What do you mean by that?
I have a hand brayer. It's fairly heavy, but I've had students. We have internships at Piscataqua Fine Arts too. And they come from various art schools, and what they do is they learn the real life activity of a gallery and being an artist. They leave their environment, which is a school full of people who kind of think alike, and you know, they have a social kind of an order in the art school. But when they leave that school, they find out that that's not what the world is like. And I always refer to it as walking the plank. So what we try to do at Piscataqua Fine Arts is make a nice little dinghy underneath the plank, so when they walk, there's a place they can land and get back to shore. So it really is true. A great percentage of anyone who goes to the school, art school, will never practice when they leave. It's just, it's very easy to feel to be alien in an environment that doesn't always foster works of art or doesn't pay much attention to them. And the educational system has so much to do with that, but that's another story, that's another talk. But I got off the track. Where was I going with that? Oh, okay, the ink. So what happens is that oftentimes people will roll, they'll put the ink on, and then they'll roll it and roll it. I said, no, drive it into the block, drive it, and think the ink onto the surface. Don't roll it onto the surface. You have to be thinking about the block and how the ink is going on, and a system of putting the ink on so that you know each area has been covered well. You're not over-inking, you're not under-inking. So it takes a lot of concentration and thought. It's not like you're just putting ink on a block or rolling a, it's a very intense experience. And it gets really intense when you're toward the end. And those impressions have to be really, because no matter what kind of work or how well you may have printed or how well you may have cut that block, when you get toward the end, things can happen. You can erase a lot of tremendous amount of work and effort on a bad day, wrong choice of color, bad decisions. So what you're trying to do is bring the process from a very germination, a beginning, to an end and have it all stay together, so that at the end you'll have more things will have worked than less in your favor. So, you know, and people say, aren't you worried about making a mistake? And I tell them, you know, life in large part is a mistake. So you just don't worry, you know, you just do the very best you can, moment by moment. And then you adjust when things you don't think are going. And then there are times when I make a print, I'm almost ready to throw it away. But I keep it. And I'll just carry it through the process. And I end up with that. I almost threw this in the barrel. And so forth. I do like to try to train the people that I work with to be more intense and to try to get a beautiful print rather than just, you know, putting color on blocks. And also mixing color is major. And this particular medium requires really a kind of a color theory that you adopt. And you're working usually from light to dark, and you have to print your brightest colors first usually. So you need to know what special colors to mix to get in and out of what seems to be situations that create a problem. So the color is important, and bringing it from the beginning to a conclusion. It's really like doing 8 or 9 prints and putting them all together. And I do liken it to the one thing I do liken it to is a musical score. And then you can listen to parts of, if symphonic score with beautiful sounds and instruments, you can hear what strings are doing, you can read it. You can read what brass are doing. You can read what percussion is doing. So, and it's interesting to hear them in and of themselves rehearse. But then when you put all of the sounds together that are layered, then you get a result, a symphonic, a gathering together of sounds. And this is a gathering together of ideas and layered one upon the other. And hopefully you'll get one product, one idea, one thought. And also what I do is I save my wood. Once that wood's gone, you can't print, you can't draw, you don't get a color. So what I do is I very carefully think every square inch of that block and leave myself enough wood so that I can introduce more and more color into smaller and smaller areas, so that it's more delightful to look at as you're looking at the print. There's so many more subtleties and nuance, and so, you know, and it's like people who can orchestrate and write beautiful sounds and music. You think you're hearing one sound, but it may be several instruments making that sound. But it becomes ambient because of that. It's special. You got, what kind of a sound? How does he get that? And it's because they're orchestrated. They're using certain, you know, tones and layers and colors. So, and the colors oftentimes happen to be my interest of late is to use a lot of grayscale colors. Grayscale color. And that is it. I choose and look at the time of day. I see the coloration of the time of the day. And I see the sky, the color in the sky. All of the colors I mix have to be infused with that color, that time of day. The blue goes into the brown, the blue goes into the red, the blues go in. And so all the colors are intermixing with one another to create a tonal kind of an effect. It's not primary. There are magnificent ways of working merely in primary colors and bright masses of light, dark, red, light, blue, primary. But these are all colors which are more, my goal more is atmosphere and to create a kind of a tonality. I should question you? Yeah.
You spoke of students who did not pursue art after their graduation. Could you share with us how you made the choice to continue on, and how did you find your way into being a master of this?
It's long and difficult. It's long and difficult. I was not ever. There are things in life that take people different places, and my life was very simple. I mean, I didn't even get a drive. I didn't drive till I was in my late 30s, and I was never wedded. So I didn't have the kinds of responsibilities and circumstances that can arise from certain ways of living. So I was able to be relatively free and live in my opulent splendor of poverty. But it afforded me time. The most important thing that an artist needs is time and freedom. And so I guess really, though, the main reason that I was able to keep going is that I had a teacher from the 8th grade that I was tutored privately from the 8th grade to the 12th grade. And Eleanor tutored me, and she remained my art companion for all the years up to, she passed away recently last year at 100, and I took care of her for quite a number of years. But Eleanor was always there as an anchor. And so I had a place that I could go back to and refer to, a mentor. And I think it's important. Everyone needs help. But they need to know the person they're helping wants to do this. And, you know, so that is really what kept me going. And also I had a passion for the theatricality of that part of life and the music. And being an artist really is not merely a function of painting, drawing, printmaking, or sculpture. There is a cultural part of it. You have to mature culturally as well as technically. Culturally meaning it's all right to do this. And you have to know what your place is relative in society to other people's, and how can you fit in. And the difficult thing with art school is that people don't get that. And they don't realize. So then when they come to Piscataqua Fine Arts and they're an intern, they go, oh, look, people are coming in, they're looking at the paintings and drawings. And oh, somebody just bought one. And so it does happen. So there's an air of reality to the situation. And also they come in, and there are people who I thought didn't have very much ability. And then when they leave, it's amazing the prints that they made. And partly it's because whether they care for the work or whatever you think of the work, technically, I mean, there's a certain a standard has been met in the gallery. They see the works all hanging. And so they're more under an obligation that they have to meet some standard of technical excellence or seriousness. So I think when you work among people who are really, really good at what they do, you get better. And I think that's one of the other functions of the internships, is that they're in a small environment, but it's intense. And they're close. Also, they're close to everything. My gallery is narrow and it's small. It's like a submarine, and you go from the front to the back. So there's no escape, no route of escape. So that's, I think.
How did you start in woodblock?
I painted outdoors for years, and I loved painting backdrops and murals and sets, but somehow I just got very intrigued with the graphic aspect. It's the constructivist part of working. It's woodcut is interesting because it informs all of the arts. It's sculpture, it's making color, it's drawing, and also the beauty of the print and woodcut and our printing in general, Bob, right? And that is that there's a mystery. You think you have an idea of what you've done, but you don't really know until you peel that paper off the template. And now the paper informs you of who you are. And the surprises are extraordinary. And it's that wonderful mystery. You think you know what you have, you hope it will be, and sometimes it turns out to be even more what you had hoped, sometimes less. But I love that collaboration between the materials and the space and time and your ideas. And ceramics is a lot like that too. You have sculpture, you do, and all of a sudden you glaze this and then you put it into a kiln, and you don't know until you open up that kiln what you really have. So there's a little bit of mystery there too. So that's why I do like doing the woodcut. And also it's visceral. I mean, I like the digging and the carving and the cutting and the blocks and slapping it onto the press bed, right? Bob?
Yeah. Mystery isn't part of my game. They want to see what they put down on the block.
This is true because when somebody comes in and says, Bob, here's my print, I want it to look exactly like that, all 50 of them. There's no mystery there. But there's a lot of mystery in these gravures.
On the lower right margin, there's a rectangle with cubes of color. Is that?
That shows the color chart.
Yeah, what I actually did, on some of the blocks, I'll make a color chart. After I make the color, I'll cut that part of the block away, print the next color, cut that part of the block. And so people can see, some people can see when they own the print, the number of colors that are in the print and the order they were printed in. And it makes it very interesting, I think, you know.
Nobody's asked you why your name's over here, Don.
And then you have it here in that corner.
That's right, I wrote my own epitaph.
But you reversed it and put it there.
That's right.
I scraped it out on the copper plate.
So it's not a bad place to end up. So, and I understand.
A lot of stories these other gravestones though.
Pam, somebody told me when the softball goes in there, it's an automatic double. Any questions?
This was a fun project. Don and I got this done very quickly. Normally this would take him about 3 months to do. We got it done in about 5 weeks. So the benefit of us working together and banging these out, we were exhausted, but it got done very quickly. Then you wait for the ink to dry. While the ink's drying, he cuts the block. So I go back up to Portsmouth and help him with the next color. So it went really smooth.
There were 37 prints done, Bob? So if you multiply 37 prints times 11 colors, that's how many times the block went through the press. And we used to print the entire 37 in one day.
But it was, you know, it was a good day's work.
Yeah.
Had a nice dinner and slept well.
Do you sell
Oh.
rejects?
Do I what? Oh, do I sell the rejects? Well, I sometimes I think most of them are rejects. But I do sell them. You know, life isn't perfect. Because sometimes I have prints that I've done, and occasionally I would write notes underneath on the margins. And one print I finished and I went, dark, too dark, must change color, this must happen, no, we have to do this, change that. I pulled the print out 2 years later, and it was the best print of all of them. So if one wants to define reject, I don't know, because sometimes I don't, you know. And now whoever owns that print, when they start reading that.
So after you put the paper on the block once and roll it, how long do you have to wait? How long does it take for it to dry?
The earlier prints soak into the paper and dry more immediately. But once you've gotten 3, 4, or 5 colors down, now you need to wait. As Bob said, you need a couple of days for that to dry. And now sometimes it wasn't drying because of humidity or what have you, and so I actually had fans blowing into the drying rack to try to speed up that, because you can't print the next color. Because what'll happen is it won't go wet and wet. The half-dried color will get picked up by the last color and end up on the surface. It's a terrible look. Really, it's...
There's tricks to accelerate it too. You can sometimes, after a day, just run a piece of newsprint over it and strip the wet ink off the surface. It doesn't have any effect on the color that's down, except flatten the ink and release some of the drier ink or wetter ink on the surface. So in some cases where we might have applied the ink too heavily, it comes right off, because that takes maybe 4 days to dry. So there's little tricks you do to move it along.
And different colors, some colors dry slower than others. Yeah, and earth colors dry very quickly, usually. So there's a lot of technical things, you know, you get into the weeds, and but it's very, very challenging, and that's what I like about it. You know, just the challenge. People say, well, it's relaxing, or do you love it? I'm not sure that they're the right words. But there's a certain something to solve, and it takes everything that you have to do it, all of your facility. and there's risk involved, and it's a pursuit.
For all the printing Don's done, there's some things he's really stupid about. Like,
Thank you.
like the press in particular, he gets all frustrated with the press because it's not operating properly. And a lot of the reasons are his floor is like this, and you're constantly trying to balance the press so that the rollers and the bed and is everything in tune. And so I go up quite a bit just to be Mr. Fix-It.
That's right.
In the morning. I get a free lunch out of it, so I don't mind going up. But it's some simple things, and they're going, why am I even here? But I get them going again.
It's true, I am moronic in many cases with the technical parts. Yeah, Bob, I have a problem here.
You've worked on the Don Press for 30 years. It's like, geez.
But he's true. It's right. I work and live in the warehouse in Portsmouth on Market Street, and it's a beautiful location. The warehouses were built in 1801 or 2, but the one I'm in hasn't had an awful lot of squaring and straightening out. So, you know, upstairs I live above the gallery, and I actually almost roll out of bed. So when I get out of bed, I sort of run downhill a little bit. It's true. It really is true. And when I go to bed, I run and jump.
That's not the floor. That's all your work.
This is true. I'm surrounded by my work. When I lean over in bed, I hit a print. It's very cramped, but you know, I need to.
The life of Don.
Who makes your etching press?
The press that I had was, there was a fellow whose name was Andre Boudin, and he lived in Coventry, Connecticut. And he used to make by hand the American French tool etching press. So if you wanted one, you called him up, and he said, okay, I can have one in about 3-4 months. So he would make it, and then he came up. At the time I was living at Stillington Hall. It was an estate in Gloucester, and the room that it was going to go in was a little bit small, and I hadn't realized it, but he actually made the wheel of the press a little smaller to fit into the room. It's big anyway. So he came up, he finished the press. He said, Don, I have the press ready. So he brought the press up. He came up in a heavy truck, and he had a young man with him, carried all the pieces of it. The roller is 300 pounds, the bed, it's a half a ton in pieces. So he came up, got the whole thing, went all the way down the cloister with it, brought it into the bedroom, set the whole press up, everything was perfect. And he sold the rights to Conrad Press Company. And Conrad makes a lot of etching presses, but they also now make the American French tool press.
Bought out the Brand press rights.
And they bought, right, Charles Brand, another well-known etching press, was also, they bought the rights to and make that press as well. There are some wonderful etching presses available and makers. Well, I print my wood blocks on the etching press. Some people print them with a spoon by hand.
That was the museum school.
You did that?
At the museum school.
Really? Yes.
Did they teach you?
Huh?
They taught you the same thing. Don't you remember wood engravings?
I don't remember too much of what I did at the museum school, actually. It was 1968. If any of you recall. But no, not many people did woodcuts at the museum school.
Wood engraving. We had.
You did wood engraving, but you know it wasn't a popular medium. Everybody wanted to do lithography, etching, but woodcut was, you know, occasionally somewhat wasn't that popular.
Class went up to Gloucester one time and we did designs, and of course it was always motif number 1. That coming out of a barn, and then I remember printing with a spoon and just rubbing it.
Sure. Yeah, it's a lot of work. I just printed because I did a big block with Bob recently, and I can't print it on my press, but on his press, we could print it this way. Bob has one of 2 remaining presses in the country, and it's probably from that wall to about here in width. Steel roller, and then it's, you know, from you to me in length. So he prints on this press very big etchings and woodcuts.
Built in 1900. It's an old cast iron clunker. It was built in the West Coast. Weighs around 12,000 pounds.
And very briefly, Bob, if you can very briefly tell them how you got that press.
I started out.
You have 3 minutes.
3 minutes, okay. 3 minutes, Bob.
I started out at an impressions workshop in Boston in 1968, right out of art school. My boss was Stephen Andrus, who was a retired doctor from Harvard. He ran the business, he had a lot of money, and just took over the shop from George Lockwood, who founded Impressions Workshop. Anyway, Forbes Lithograph on Boylston Street was going out of business. And we knew they had like rolling tables, flat files. We went over to look to see what we could buy. And over in the corner was this press. And they were on the fifth floor of this building. It's going to get demolished. So they said, if you want it, if you can get out of here by next Wednesday, it's yours. So we got the riggers. They came over and brought it over to the shop on Stanhope Street. And that's where it stayed until I bought it in 1982 and moved it out to Georgetown, Mass. So that's 3 minutes.
Well, almost in conclusion, I just want to thank all of you for having taken the time to come here for the talk. And the museum is just magnificent. All of you are so friendly. And I'm very humbled to be able to be here to do this. Yeah, thank you.